And welcome to Weather and Ag in Focus. I want to thank everybody for joining us. 1:06 in the afternoon. I'm Chief Meteorologist Dean Wysocki, along with, do we have Bridgette, or is she with us yet?
Oh, yeah, I'm here, but guess who I have?
I'm here, too.
Oh, no, you're both there. So we got Bridgette and Justin out in our cornfield. I don't know whether.
Oh, you said it wrong. No. It's Kernfield. It's a Kernfield.
Ah, gotcha. Gotcha.
Yep. And actually, our plan is we're just going to drive around and drink, like, malts and ice cream shakes until the show's over. So let us know how it goes.
I got strawberry. Bridgette's got chocolate.
Yep.
Oh, boy. Are you sure? I smell a martini lunch. That's what I'm thinking.
I'm pretty sure it's strawberry and chocolate.
Pretty sure.
Yeah. Mixed with
well, ice cream and milk.
Yeah. So what do you guys doing out there, guys? Doing a little filming, or inform us?
We're just dancing, but I suppose we probably should do some filming.
Okay, we were out here with one of our sponsors. We managed to get some footage. Our corn coming right along. And so is Justin's waltzing. He's getting much better, too.
Very good.
Yeah, excellent.
Now, is there how are the weeds? Is it better than expected? Maybe a little behind schedule?
Looks great, and it is doing very good.
Yep. Let's just say the ground is damp, a little tacky, you might say.
Yeah.
But we're not holding water. And as far as weeds are concerned, it's probably going to need another pass here pretty soon. Justin walked by a weed and said, "What is this?" And we could identify lamb's quarter pigweed. We saw some ragweed, volunteer soybeans, and actually some bindweed. So a number of things were going on out there.
Wow. Okay. Now, how many times they have to spray for that during the season, Bridgette? Does it depend on
how many weeds you have, how much they emerge, and how tall your corn gets? Because you get to a point where your corn is competing with the weeds and shading it out, and then you don't have to go out anymore because the corn pretty much shades everything beneath it.
Gotcha. Cool. Now, and what about any updated predictions, or do we have to wait for the corn to actually emerge?
What do you think? Predictions?
Well, I think we're looking good for a potential 225, Dean.
You're still holding on to that, aren't you?
It's good-looking corn, and it's going to beat knee-high by the 4th of July based on where it's at right now.
So our sponsor was with us, one of them, Dairyland Seed, and so Brian Weller, the regional agronomist, joined us. And Brian, he could actually show us on the plant where the cob is right now, where it's developing. And it's still, like, inside the main stems, but it's there.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Wow. Who knew it was so complicated?
Bridgette.
We kind of had an idea.
Oh, man. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to have some good kern growing weather as we head into
there you go.
the latter half of the weekend, and more summer-like temperatures. We're going to kick the 70s out the door, and we're going to welcome the 80s in, and hopefully the 80s and even warmer 90s are here to stay for a while. It looks like we're getting into that warmer regime as we head towards next week, and then this is something that the LRC is kind of predicting for the majority of the summer is we're going to have temperatures at or a little bit above normal, but we're going to see these Canadian cold fronts snip off any extended periods of heat. But plenty of 80s and, even some 90s will start to rear their heads here as we head into next week. But then even towards the 4th of July weekend, that's looking with warmer temperatures. If we cool down, it'd be into the upper 70s briefly before things warm back up. But for our area, to the rest of today, I could see you guys have a little cloud cover over the field, and it's the same way over most of the central and southern valley. A lot of cloud cover out there today. But it's mild temperatures in the low 70s. We'll make it up into the mid 70s today with a little bit of a breeze out of the southeast. And tonight, as the system passes to our south, as it slowly moves north, we could see a few isolated showers or thunder showers, but precip amounts it's going to remain mainly along and south of the 94 corridor. Lows near 60 tonight, and a few showers or thunder showers possible on your Friday, especially later in the day, with highs in the low to mid 70s. Those showers exit the area Saturday morning, leaving the rest of the day okay, with highs in the mid-70s and then more sunshine on Sunday, with temperatures in the low 80s. And it looks like we'll stay in the 80s all next week. So that should help our little cobs start to grow a little bit more out in the field.
Okay. You called that a Canadian cold front coming in? Is that what I heard?
No, that we'll have numerous Canadian cold fronts coming through, like later next week. We'll go from the mid to upper 80s down to about 80 on Wednesday before things start to rebound back up.
Well, find out who that guy is and tell him to stop coming down here because we could use a few growing degree days to get our corn up and taller.
Yeah, and we'll be seeing more of that here over the next few weeks, so that's good news.
Dan, we had a question come in on our email inbox, and anyone that wants to be a part of the show today, feel free to give us a call on the Red Wing Shoe line. That's 701-293-9000, or email, as this individual did, weather.or.ag@flagfamily.com. Tyler was wondering, with all the news of the heat dome setting up on the East Coast, how does that affect our weather here in North Dakota?
Well, I mean, that's the same heat dome. If you think of a bowl of soup, let's say you're carrying a bowl of soup and you hit a couple of bumps and that soup kind of wobbles back and forth and east, west, north, south. That's kind of like this big old heat dome. It's not gonna stay in one place. Consider it, you're driving the car and you hit a little bump and that's gonna move a little westward and a little northward. And then we might hit another bump and it goes a little southward. That's kind of the best way to explain that heat dome that's parked over the East Coast and stretching into the desert Southwest. It's not locked in one place. It's going to be constantly moving throughout the summer, but focusing, at least in our area, we're going to see breaks from the heat. But areas down to our south, not so much. Central Southern Plains into the southeast, they're going to be probably cooking most of the summer. So yeah, it is what it is. At least we're getting some heat coming back. So that's good news there. Except for people that don't like the heat, but I think that's the easiest way to explain it. Right now it's anchored out west, but it will be retrograding, or out east, but it will be retrograding back westward.
Right. And in terms of precip, it's probably not going to be a favorable situation for us being on the northwestern edge of that heat dome, because a lot of the upper-level disturbances that come through are going to ride along that edge, and they're going to come over our area. And
that's why the LRC was predicting above normal precip from the valley eastward, anticipating that ring of fire pattern where these thunderstorms ride over that heat ridge, and that's exactly what's going to be happening later this summer. It's a different setup that we have right now that's causing the excessive rains in parts of Minnesota. Man, they're just, over the next 24 or 48 hours, central and southern Minnesota are just going to get hit with probably another 1 to 3 inches of rain. They don't need it. That's not good. That's definitely not good for the crops in southern Minnesota, because they were in drought conditions last year, and this year total flip-flop. I mean, now they're dealing with standing water in the fields, and that's going to be tough on the crops in southern Minnesota.
Well, if we had standing water on our corn, the good news is Gowan and Company has brought us a Fiance fungicide, and we may use that. I know we're going to use it, but we may look at it as a help when it comes to things like tar spot, which haven't necessarily moved into the area, but where you're discussing, Dean, does have tar spot, also gray leaf blight. And so the good news is a Fiance fungicide from Gowan will be protecting our corn. Also, I just wanted you to know that when you parked on a gravel road chatting away, people roll up and just roll down their window to talk to you. That was just our farmer, Trigby, who came by and said, "You guys on the air? What are you doing over there?"
Yeah, yes, we are.
We might do the show like this all the time, Justin. We'll just park out here and see what's going on.
Oh, this is way more fun.
It is. The air conditioning's excellent.
It is.
Well, guys, we've got a special guest in house today. Bridgette, would you like to introduce I don't think he's been on the show before.
Yes, he has, a couple times. And honestly, Don, he definitely needs no introduction. Don Kinzler with NDSU. He comes out with as an extension agent and is happy to share with us his wealth of knowledge on lawns, gardens, shrubs, and trees. To be honest, I used to listen to Don when I would listen to like Prairie Public, and now I get to talk to Don and ask him questions. So I feel like this is a pretty big dream come true for me to just have Don Kinzler at my disposal. How's that?
Yeah, and we've got plenty of questions for Don. And if you have any questions for Don, feel free to give us a call, 701-293-9000. That's 701-293-9000. Don't go anywhere. We'll have Don Kinzler coming up right after the break.
Oh, and we are back with Weather Nag in Focus. And honestly, we're really, really live. Justin and I are literally out by our cornfield today.
We're in a ditch.
Sort of. I mean,
Already pulling ticks off of me.
yeah, you had a record number.
Yeah, that was a lot of ticks.
Wow, this is like worse than a softball game for ticks.
Not quite, but it's up there.
Okay, well, that's not going to go real well for you. But I would like to point out that our field was drier than I thought it was going to be today. I can't quite give all the compliments to our drainage from Ellingson, but I can say thank you to Red River Retention Authority and all the work that they do to making sure that water flows out of here. Do not forget that they are holding their Authority Partner Summit on July 31st in Grand Forks. They are featuring former Minnesota Representative Colin Peterson. It'll be an excellent conference. Hope to see you there. More importantly, we're really glad to see Don Kinzler is in studio today. Don, if you could, please keep an eye on Dean. We're concerned he might not do well without us there.
Oh, good afternoon. It is great to be here. Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Well, where would you like to start? Because we got like 42 questions for you.
Well, the first thing I wanted to mention, it's fun when we're driving around towns, yards, etc., just to see what's blooming, what's growing. And as you're driving around towns, notice the trees on boulevards or people's yards. Right now, the Japanese tree lilacs with their big poofy white blossoms are just coming into blossom. And now you wouldn't even know that they're a lilac, because lilac, we think of the old-fashioned, purple type big shrub. But these are a tree type, and they're just coming into gorgeous bloom. So anybody looking for a well-adapted winter hardy tree, they're a smaller scale tree, kind of along the lines of maybe a flowering crabapple, but a wonderful, wonderful disease-free species. Japanese
Well, if anybody
tree
wants to relocate one to my yard, I'd take it. Drop it off.
I'll take one as well.
Yeah. So anyway, notice those as you're driving around. I as I was driving to the studio here, I noticed them. They're beautiful.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
All right, who wants to start? Bridgette, Dean?
I'll lead it off here. We've got a couple of email questions that came in, and one of them is ask Don to answer why rhubarb that was awesome last year is just spindly and thin now.
Well, rhubarb doesn't like it too wet, which we've had, but it also doesn't like it too dry. And so, if it is setting in wet, heavy soil, like it probably has been all spring and early summer, that could deplete it. But also things like perennials like rhubarb, what happens one year is oftentimes reflected in the next year. Okay, it builds up energy one year, or it doesn't build up energy, and then the next year it responds to that. So now the last 3 years, it's been hot, very dry. Rhubarb doesn't like that. Rhubarb would rather have it a little on the cool side. And so it's possible if it didn't come back strongly this year, it could be a result of last year just didn't like those conditions. And so, but here's one thing that a person can do with that rhubarb to kind of get it recharged. So hopefully the soil's going to dry out so it's not constantly soggy. But here's one thing you can do. Rhubarb is a heavy feeder. I love that old gardening term, a heavy feeder. That means that it's a plant that really likes the extra nutrition. It responds well to fertilizer. So with a water-soluble type, the Miracle Grow is probably the most nationally recognized. But on an established rhubarb plant, I would probably give it about 3 gallons of solution, follow label directions, and slowly pour it around it. I would do that now, and maybe once again in 2 weeks, and that'll give it some extra nutrition to help, because again, we're looking for next year. The energy that it produces this year will be reflected next year. And so, fertilizer. I would really try. And of course, not much we can do about soggy, wet soil.
Right.
Right. Hope it dries out as quick as it can. Don, east side of houses, is that an okay or a good place for petunias? And if not, what other plants would you recommend for flower boxes where it's only getting full sun until about noon on the east side of a house?
Oh, I love the east side of a houses. If you have one preferred location for almost anything, that east side is just absolutely delightful. And here's why. It gets the morning sun, which tends to be cooler. So if it gets it till noon, 1 o'clock, it's getting plenty of sunshine, such as the petunias. And by the way, we grow petunias on our porch on the east side. They do beautifully. And then as the afternoon gets hot, then it's in shade on the east side usually. And so you get the best of both. It gets enough sunshine, but also it doesn't wilt and kind of go downhill in that hot afternoon sun. So almost anything, if it's getting that full until noon or 1 o'clock, almost anything can be grown under those conditions. That's almost ideal. Clematis, the beautiful purple flowered is the most common. The clematis vine, that absolutely loves the east side of a building. And so, if I had a spot in which to grow things, flowers, and I'm lucky enough we do I guess most houses have 4 sides, don't they? But if you can,
not all.
Yeah, maybe not all, a roundhouse maybe. But anyway, that east side is a really nice location to grow almost anything.
So, Don, you mentioned fertilizer earlier when it comes to rhubarb. And I see on the shelf at stores that you can get those fertilizer spikes for citrus or fruits. So follow-up question going back to the rhubarb. do those fertilizer spikes work well for something like a rhubarb or an apple tree, or is there a better method that should be used to fertilize those plants?
Okay, fertilizer spikes will give some nutrition, but when you drive those fertilizer spikes into an area, around a plant, around a rhubarb, around a tree, there's going to be a localized impact where the roots in that vicinity of the fertilizer spike will absorb that. But I would prefer either a granular type spread around the root system or the water-soluble type that is poured around the root system, because those materials will have a more uniform uptake by the roots and not such a localized that a fertilizer spike would provide.
All right. And Don, we've got another email question here asking about, says their neighbor has some thistle growing in their yard and it's spreading into their yard. What can they do to treat or eliminate the thistle, or do they need to go and threaten the neighbor?
Well, of course, we all want to be good neighbors.
Yeah, that's true.
But boy, that's always a point of contention. If something is coming into your yard from the other yard, and what do we do? Okay, and of course, thistles in a home yard, they're one of the most difficult things to control. And of course, one thing that we really have to be careful is that we use when we're trying to control a hard-to-control thing in the lawn, such as thistles. We need to make sure that the product that we use is cleared and labeled for lawns. For example, each year we see damage to trees, shrubs, vegetable gardens from farm-type chemicals that were inappropriately used on a home lawn, things such as Milestone, Crossbow, Wide Match, things that are not labeled for lawn. And in many cases, I'd have to familiarize myself with the label, but some of those indicate not for use on home lawns because there's so much potential for damage. And so what do we use on thistle coming in? Okay, thistles become very hard to control in the heat of the summer. So control is easier in the spring when that thistle is nice and fresh, in May and early June, when they're nice and fresh and tender, and again in the fall of the year. So what I like to do, and of course I've got thistles in my lawn too, patches, and so I like to hit them in the early summer when they're tender, and again in the fall. And so you keep doing that. Okay, so what are we going to use? If a person uses something, let's see, this is a good opportunity to mention this. We're seeing a lot of injury this year on trees and shrubs from lawn herbicide. Now, here's what's going on. When we use lawn herbicides, and some of them contain products that are labeled, such as dicamba. Now, dicamba moves quite readily through the soil. We've had a lot of rain. So when some of these lawn chemicals are put on the lawn, with this much rain, it can move those products down into the root zone of trees or shrubs, and then the tree roots take them up, and pretty soon we get curling. So it's not always just from a drift above, but these materials that get down into the tree roots, and of course that's not a good situation. So getting back to the thistle, if it's a dozen thistle popping up in a lawn, it's not too difficult to spot treat those thistles. Okay, we could use good old 2,4-D, but that doesn't do a real good job on thistle. But if you keep on it, 2,4-D amine doesn't move around as much. Like I say, dicamba would have more effect, but it can move down in. But if we spot treat those thistles, now here's another thing with glyphosate, the original Roundup. If you've got just a dozen thistle coming into the lawn, of course, that glyphosate would kill the lawn grass. But it's not too difficult to take a paintbrush. This isn't as bad as it sounds. You can dip a paintbrush into glyphosate and dab it onto the center of each of those thistles. If your entire yard is covered with thistles, this would be out of the question. But if you've got a dozen moving in, you could probably in 15 minutes go and dab some glyphosate on, and be careful not to splash it onto your good grass. But common problem, and not so always easy to tackle.
So Don, that's an excellent point. I know we're at 1:30. We've got to take a moment for some news. But when you mentioned the dicamba can possibly move into the soil profile with all the heavy rain, one thing that can probably help folks, do not spray under the drip line of your trees. So if you look at your furthest out branch, draw a line straight to the ground. That's your drip line. So stay out from underneath there. Don't go up to the trunk. That'll probably help to keep that product away from your root system, correct?
That's a good point. That's where a lot of the feeder roots are. But here's the challenge. The root system of a tree goes out 2 to 3, sometimes 4 times the height of the tree. For example, a tree that's only 25 feet tall, 25 times 2, 50, or 25 times 3, the roots go out quite a ways. But the feeder roots are by the drip line, but there are additional feeder roots even farther out. And that's what makes the lawn herbicide such a challenge. Because most of our yards, if we have a shade tree, those roots are probably under most of the lawn.
Awesome.
So
okay,
that does
Don,
make it
we're going
tricky.
to come back. We have got still a rapid fire amount of questions for you. And
we can do the
want to encourage
lightning
anyone
round.
else. The lightning round. But we also want to encourage our listeners. Call us at 701-293-9000, the Red Wing Shoe phone line. And then additionally, send us emails, ag or weather @flagfamily.com. Hold on. We'll come back with Don Kinzler.
Boo-hoo, boo-hoo. The air's so strong it takes my breath away, quite away. I'm a lonely widow petunia in an onion patch. Oh, won't you come and play with me?
welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus. Thanks for rejoining us. It is 1:35 in this afternoon. We have Don Kinzler, the Garden Master, in with us today. If you got any questions, feel free to give us a call, 701-293-9000, or email weatherorag@flagfamily.com. And, well, Don, we have lots of questions for you, so I'm just going to keep on ripping them at you, all right?
Sure, that's fine, except I got to take exception. Garden Master, no. We're all in this together, like I always say. I got weeds like the best of them. I struggle. I've killed more plants than anyone. So, Master, no, but we're all in it together. How's that?
We can't understand how your lawn is not immaculate, Don. Justin and I are in absolute fascination at that right now.
Did Don just say he had thistle in his yard?
How is that possible?
Well,
No way.
I'm battling them along with the best of you. How's that?
Hey, we're all doing the battle together.
We are.
Don, I got some friends that are doing a little bit of landscaping out at their lake place in the Bemidji area. And they're going to be landscaping kind of near the shoreline outside of the shelter belt there along the lake. Their lake association would prefer that they do native and different perennials from around the area. What would you recommend for landscaping different perennials and flowers around there?
Boy, these are good times for landscaping with native-type plants, grasses, things like that, because the locally owned garden centers will be able to help you out. The chain stores, maybe not so much, but locally owned garden centers, shop around a bit. But they will have native-type perennials and a selection of grasses, and so a person can start with plants like that. And that's probably the surest way to get started. You can plant things from seed, but that's going to take a while. And, of course, the weeds come up at the same rate or faster than the other things do from seed. So I'd really suggest visiting with the local garden centers and look for the native plants. And that's always a good idea because, if they're native here, they're well adapted.
All right. And we've got Alan on line one with a question for you, Don. Alan, go ahead. What's your question today?
Yes, I got a Honeycrisp apple tree, and we've had it for probably about 4 to 5 years. It's not real big, but it's full of apples this year. I noticed about a month ago from the ground up, probably 18 inches, there's a crack that it probably goes about a foot, vertical on the trunk. One, what would cause that? And then the other one, what can a guy do, if anything?
Okay, yeah, so what would cause that? Fruit trees, apple trees, plum trees are very susceptible to winter damage. What oftentimes will happen is the sun reflecting off of the snow in wintertime will burn the trunks of trees, similar to when a skier can get a sunburn in the wintertime. Well, anyways, sometimes that sun reflecting off the snow will warm up the tree trunk, and it'll start a little bit of growth. Then the sun goes down, the temperatures plunge again, and you get that freezing and thawing that ruptures cells and can cause cracking, things like that. And that's the best reason why we wrap the apple trees, in the fall of the year. Sometimes, regardless of our best efforts to wrap, things like that can still happen. And so what does a person do? Okay, when you see something like that on the trunk of the tree that has already happened, the tree itself has to heal that. Pruning paint, sealers, anything like that have been shown to be adversely effective. They can actually do more harm than good. And so the tree, they have a remarkable capacity to heal themselves. But, that is a reason why apple trees in our area have a lifespan of maybe 25 or 30 years because they develop things such as that. So it's kind of a wait and see. There's not really anything that you can do, and hopefully the tree will heal itself. Were you able to wrap it last year? The trunk of the tree? And it's fine. It's fine if you didn't.
No, I didn't.
Oftentimes time gets away from us. But you might then in the fall of the year, about November, wrap the tree trunk and then take off each spring.
Okay. Is that, with that white, that white...
Yep.
use that?
Right, the white
You
tubes.
can use that?
You can use that. What I like even better is I visit the garden centers, and there are tree wraps on a roll. They're a roll that you just spiral on up the tree trunk, fasten the bottom and top with masking tape, and you can even work that wrap through the lower branches too. You know, the what do you call them? Not the uppermost, but you know, the straight trunk, and then the branches. You can kind of snake it through there, and that works really, really well.
All right, Alan.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, common question.
Yeah, thanks for calling, Alan. Have a great day. All right, that was interesting, no doubt. I know Bridgette's got a couple of questions that she's got to throw at you.
I've been getting some email questions here that we have to answer. A couple of them, in fact. So one is from Peter. He said last time Don was on, he gave great advice about a veggie garden. He has corn, carrots, onions, pumpkins, and watermelon sprouting. Should he be thinning any of them? He planted seeds with multiple seeds per hole, and the carrots and onions he poured in a line. I would venture a guess that if you poured them all out, it depends on how thick they are, right? If your corn is probably less than 8 inches apart, you're going to want to thin that. The onions should be spread out a little bit.
Carrots about 2 inches apart. Yep, carrots. Otherwise, it'll just be all little pencil-sized carrots. Radishes, lettuce, everything such as that, 1 to 2 inches apart. The melons should only be maybe 2 plants in a grouping, and then spaced about 5 or 6 feet apart, really.
Okay, that is excellent, Don.
Yeah, thinning is great.
You know what? When you're thinning, you'll have many people tell you, like, take the thinned out little radishes or carrots and lettuce, and you can use those in a garden salad. They're perfectly good to eat.
They are.
Then you have another question here from Michael. He says, is it good to be cutting, trimming, or removing dead branches or stems on young trees? Is it true that could take away valuable nutrients that could go to the tree if the branches or stems are left on the tree? He means if we leave the dead ones on the tree.
Yeah.
So which is the best way to go?
Dead branches should be removed at any time. Anytime you see dead branches, they really should be removed, because that's a spot that rotting things, insects can detect dead branches and decide that's a good place to live, rotting organisms as well. So anytime we see dead branches on a tree, we really should prune it out.
Awesome. I got a few for you as well, Don, that are coming in. One is, I got ants in my garden. Is that okay, or should I put anything down to kill the ants? And if so, is that going to jeopardize plants in the garden?
Boy, and ants have been all over the place this year. Lots of questions on ants.
Why is that this year?
I don't know. We're going to have on Jay's show, we're going to have the entomologists on in August, and that's got to be one of the questions.
Okay.
So I don't know why they're so prevalent, but they don't seem to hurt plants. If they aren't carpenter ants, sawing away at your tree. But they don't seem to cause any problem, and they're also very hard to get rid of. You can try the taro baits and different insecticides, but people have not had real good success. But the good news is they don't really seem to harm anything that much.
Oh, that's good. And how about flowers on peppers and tomatoes and even some vine crop like squash? Should you be picking those flowers off at this stage of the year, or is it okay to just leave those on?
Well, that is a long debated thing. How's that for an answer? Now, what I always do, if the tomato plant does not look like it's big enough that it really ought to be fruiting, I take off those first blossoms. So right now, my tomato plants were late planted. They're tiny, but they got a blossom on. I'm removing those early blossoms so that I get a bigger, healthier plant. And same with green peppers. If you get that first little pepper, I know it's tempting to want to have that first one, but I'm in it for the long haul. I want more production, so I'm going to remove those first early ones if the plant does not look like it's massive enough to be doing that. If it looks like it's just too young to be bearing, then I do remove them. It's not going to kill the plant if you left them on.
Awesome. And Nick was wondering, and he used a well-wrung-out rag, maybe he was trying to say, to apply Roundup and 2,4-D together in a strawberry patch. Is that okay?
That is. And I like that idea of a well-wrung-out rag, or even a cotton glove put over a rubber glove, dipped down in. You don't want to get this stuff on your skin, obviously, but to use something, or even a sponge, and you can kind of surgically apply these materials to weeds. So it's not always as difficult as it would sound.
And just a hint, if they're wearing those gloves, just like Don said, make sure you are wearing your chemical-resistant gloves before you are touching the rags or putting another glove over the top. We want to be safety first, folks.
Definitely.
It's huge. Okay. How are we doing, guys? Are we getting through our list? I mean, I've got one more thing here if nobody else does.
Why don't you take the last one, Bridgette?
Okay, so dandelions never cease to amaze us all. We have a story that I've had about the humble dandelion, if you will, wanting to know, should they fully remove it, like dig it up with a small spade? Is that the best way to go, Don? Or should they be using some sort of a chemical treatment and just realizing that vinegar solutions maybe don't work was part of that as well?
Yeah, vinegar tends to burn it off but not get translocated down through it. Can you believe that the dandelion was introduced onto this continent in 1600? It's not native, but it's done quite well for itself. But anyway, the upside on dandelion control is they're fairly easy to control just with a 2,4-D amine, the less volatile type versus ester. And they're fairly easy with just a 2,4-D. But if you dig them out and if you can get low enough, deep enough, I use a butcher knife, because if there's just one dandelion, I don't pull out spray. I use a butcher knife and get as deep as I can. And getting deep enough root can remove it.
And we've got one email question in here from Bridgette R. And it says, Don, I've got a lot of dandelions in my yard. I love wine. I'm thirsty. How many dandelions will it take to make a good wine?
I'd have to do a little checking on it. But my grandmother made dandelion wine.
Really?
Yeah, a nice kind of light white type wine. But I don't offhand, I don't know how many bushels of dandelion flowers it takes. And, of course, it is the flower that is used.
Interesting.
The leaves of dandelions make a fine salad, of course, with ranch dressing. Many things make a fine salad.
Hey, there we go.
That's right. Yes. I would tell you the same. Salads are best. You can keep all those things, whether it's from what you took out when you were thinning in the garden and more.
Yes, even the weed purslane, which is just the bane of vegetable gardens. Purslane. I actually did an article once on edible weeds, that we find. But one that I could not bring myself to eat was stinging nettle. I could picture my head swelling up the size of a gigantic balloon, and so I did not taste the stinging nettle.
And Don,
I touched it. That's awful.
We got a last minute caller, and just getting in under the wire here. Ken, you've got a question for Don.
Hey, hi Don.
Hi,
I've
Ken.
got some tomato plants that I put 5-gallon plastic pails around them, and they've grown up so that they're reaching up on top. They're tall enough that they're up on top. And so now I'm going to start putting a cage around them and leave the bucket, I assume. But they're starting to blossom. But I've seen a couple things where they say come along and shake them so that they'll self-pollinate. And then another thing I saw is where they actually take the plant and bend them over. And I'm not sure what that's about, but it's something to do with getting more production. Any ideas?
Yeah, I've not heard the bending them over, but tomato flowers are wind pollinated. They're self-pollinated, and so usually the wind is doing enough shaking. In greenhouses where there's no wind, unless you use fans, they do shake them or vibrate them. But outdoors, we got enough wind that we don't need to physically shake the tomatoes for good production. Now, the buckets, there's two ways of doing it. You could have taken those buckets off earlier before the tomato kind of got up and over, so you can remove those buckets and then put a cage on. But if it would damage the tomato plant to get off the 5-gallon bucket now, you could leave that in place and then put the cage around.
Great. Well, Don, thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
We could keep you on for probably another half hour, but then Jay Thomas would get mad because we'd be running into his show.
I always enjoy talking
not even
gardening.
here.
I love talking gardening, and there's so many aspects. Lawn care, fruit trees,
Right.
Flowers, vegetables.
So if anybody has any questions they didn't get to answer or get to ask, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Feel free to email me, Donald.Kinzler, Kinzler, at ndsu.edu. And I've been apologizing lately because I'm running at least a week behind in getting some of the emails.
This time of the year, I can imagine.
Yeah, but
right?
that's good. That's a wonderful problem to have.
It is. Well, Don, thanks again for joining us.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Bridgette and Justin out in the field there, too. And Dean, thank you.
No problem.
And thanks, everyone, for listening.
Have a great weekend, Don.
Appreciate it, Don.
Don't go anywhere. We'll have a last look at the forecast, and we'll try and get on a few ag topics here coming up right after the break. Welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus, 1:55 in the afternoon. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Boy, I'll tell you what, it's always great having Don on. He is an absolute wealth of knowledge. And I want to thank everybody for calling in and sending in their questions as well. We're looking at temperatures right now in the lower 70s, and we're seeing a few more breaks of sun from the 94 corridor northward. Still pretty cloudy just south of the 94 corridor, but the good news is all the rain is staying down to our south. I know a lot of people heading out to cruise night tonight for the first cruise night. Should be dry. Maybe a sprinkle towards the end, but not even counting on that. We're looking at pretty much dry conditions with temperatures holding in the 70s throughout and then falling off into the 60s towards the tail end of cruise night. And then it looks like overnight tonight we'll see those the showers that have been down in the South Dakota and southern Minnesota most of the day slowly push northward, and can't rule out an isolated shower or thunder shower overnight tonight. Again, mainly 94 corridor southward. And then for tomorrow we're looking at kind of like today, mainly dry day till later in the day. We'll see another surge of moisture come in from the south, and that could push in some showers and storms late in the day and into Friday night, lasting into Saturday. Things should start to improve, though, as we head into Saturday late in the day, and then that will set the stage. After 70s over the weekend, we're going to see temperatures in the low 80s on Sunday. So, guys, it looks like a really nice back half to the weekend, and then 80s return to the forecast for next week. So, good news there. I know a lot of people wanting the 80s. I know we want a little more in the way of heating degree days for our crops. So, with the 80s, that should help out a lot.
Good. We're good.
We're very good.
It's probably best that we aren't on video today because we were pretty much sitting over here having a grand old time.
They're hitting the wine already. They're hitting the wine already.
No.
We just had spray paint.
All we had was spray paint today.
Oh, so they're inhaling it. I see. I see how it's working.
Is it at least a fun
Absolutely.
color?
What, Addison?
Right.
Is it at least a fun color of spray paint?
Yeah.
Yep.
Red and blue.
Mm-hmm.
You ever seen that show, Red versus Blue?
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say red-green, the one up in Canada.
Oh, about the fish?
No, but it was about the guys who did fish.
Oh, right on. Really? I wonder how that went.
Not as well as you'd expect.
Oh, interesting.
Hey, Dean, can we talk about something farming?
Sure, let's make it. Let's do it.
All right. So the world record holder for cows was just sold at auction, worth $4 million. Viatina 19. She is 2,400 pounds. That's twice as heavy as an average-sized adult in her breed. Speaking of breed, she's a Zebus, which originates in India, has a distinctive hump and dewlap, folds the skin over the neck. This is a big critter raised primarily for meat. She was named Miss South America at a recent livestock show in Houston, and it's a little bit like the Miss Universe pageant for bovines. So she's a real winner.
That's a big old cow.
That
Think
is.
of the size of her steak.
Wow.
For $250,000, you can buy an embryo for your calf.
I'm going to get on that right now.
Perfect.
Well, want to thank everybody for joining us here on Weather and Ag in Focus. The Jay Thomas Show, it's coming up next.